I don't know if I've said this on the channel before, but in case I haven't, I'll say it now. A common misconception regarding the concept of the yin-yang is that while the two sides are entirely equal in the cosmological sense, meaning that one side can never fully overcome the other, that does not mean they are equipresent in all things everywhere all the time. If they were, nothing could exist or happen, since energy would be equally dispersed everywhere with no gradations or gradients, which I think we can all agree would be kind of boring. But as I've said so many times by now, it may as well be my new catchphrase: there are no solutions, only trade-offs. And the most obvious trade-off for things being interesting is that in many cases things can go wrong. Of course, the definition of going wrong entirely depends on what you want and where you're standing. For example, a thief breaking into your house and stealing your TV is all fine and well for them since they just got a TV for about 5 minutes work, but not so great for you since it probably cost you 20 to 40 hours of your life to earn enough money to put that thing on your wall legitimately.
The point I'm slowly stumbling towards is, well, actually, let me back us up a little bit. The impetus for this video was this comment that was left on a previous video about why evil always seems to win out in the end. Now, I'll admit I phrased the title and thesis point of that video how I did because I knew it would get more views than if I went with something more honest like why evolution doesn't allow altruism. However, as insightful as it is, the reason I found this comment so intriguing is because, at around the same time as it was left, I was working with someone over on Discord on a design concept for an upcoming video, and during a brief bout of creative misalignment, they said something to the effect of, "The way to solve an extreme is with another extreme." Essentially, while I was arguing for a tensegritus approach, an alignment of structure such that the strengths and weaknesses of the individual attributes cancel out, they were going the constructive interference route instead. Which, now that I see that written out, I realize is just a semantic difference. That serendipitous sentiment, combined with the idea of how the strongest force within any system is always the one most antithetical to its continual survival, made me start thinking about the bifurcation of our current political climate, the world, and history and philosophy. And in the end, I came to a somewhat obvious, yet oddly counterintuitive conclusion: that the only effective answer to an existential threat is to show it its own reflection. Think about it. How do you halt a blitzkrieg-style assault? By going on the offensive rather than hunkering down. How do you upset a tyrannical regime? By instigating a radical reform. Or, if that fails, starting a revolution. How do you stop the spread of a wildfire? By preemptively burning certain areas. How do you neutralize a bomb? By destroying it with another smaller bomb. Yes, that's a real thing actual bomb squads actually do in certain cases. And this is where the title of the video comes from. In a word, the only solution to any form of extreme, be it natural, physical, political, or ideological, is an equal and opposite form of extreme. I've stated before my belief that this is where the woke left originated from back in the 2010s and 20-teens, as a mostly online reaction of the then up-and-coming millennial generation to the perceived hypocrisies and injustices of the Bush-era neocon Republican and evangelical Protestant establishment. A movement which then picked up its own momentum and over the course of a decade warped into the very thing it swore to destroy. This is why I believe the politics of the woke left are almost universally adversarial, by which I mean they're always anti-something, a tendency that they then project onto others for various psychological reasons I won't get us into again just now, as they aren't relevant to my point, which is simply to point out the irony that the strongest force within any given system seems to be the one which is most antithetical to its continued stability. There is an almost omnipresent trope in fiction of the karmic balance of opposites, be it in the form of the hero who's either too innocent to understand the nature of the evil forces working to mete out their downfall, or is too honorable, merciful, or righteous to use the tactics necessary to win, and so their empire of light falls into darkness. Or, on the other side, we see the arrogant, solipsistic, narcissistic villain so enraptured with their own grandeur, so consumed with their own power, that they fail to notice, or at least fail to take seriously, the scrappy underground movements working to undermine their dark tower until the rebels are already storming the black gates. I've described before the projection of this fictional trope onto our real sociological circumstances as the evil king fallacy. Basically, it describes the tendency of people to want to anthropomorphize a problem, especially a large or complex one, as this makes it easier for their human instincts and intuition to get to grips with. However, having viewed this phenomenon through the lens of constructive interference, I now think it holds considerably more water than I formerly gave it credit for. Don't get me wrong, people obviously do have a self-destructive habit of safeguarding their own emotional regularity at the expense of actually solving their problems by trying to cram them into oversimplified boxes where they don't fit. But the unassailable truth of the idea that cultures naturally, inevitably, and only sometimes inadvertently produce their own karmic destroyers by investing everything into one very specific definition of virtue has never struck me quite so forcefully as it has over these last couple of days.
Essentially, cultures, which is just the how we do things around here aspect of any social group, naturally invent a morality system for themselves centered around an idea of what they consider good, which is usually based on those actions that yield a beneficial outcome for the group, if not necessarily the individual. The problem with this is that no matter what their standard of goodness or virtue is, as soon as it becomes enshrined in the public consciousness that a good person does thinks X, then X always becomes a vehicle of gaining social status. The more morally righteous you are, the more other people within your group will respect and want to associate with you, and thus, your influence and power within said group expands. That's why everyone wants status. It naturally leads to an increase in wealth. And it's also why people with wealth naturally must proclaim it as their reward for their superior virtue, lest their peers and/or minions use the accusation of immorality as an attack vector to dispossess them of their rank and fortunes. But for every light, there's a shadow, and so whenever a society defines what is good, they're also necessarily defining what is evil. And whenever a society devolves to where the only avenue of social advancement left is to pass an endless barrage of purity tests, mandated by the established social elite, who naturally reserve the purity seals for those that are either already members of or are in some other way useful to their big club, the result will be the disaffection and eventual disillusionment of the youth, if not the general population, to that particular notion of virtue, as the society that it generated and perpetuates no longer supports their best interests. Hence, they're seeing no further virtue in it. And thus what we observed initially with the woke movement, and what we're seeing now again echoed with MAGA, i.e. a rejection by the young of everything that defined the old established order that they perceive as having abused, abandoned, and/or neglected them and their needs in favor of promoting its own. Again, don't get me wrong, I understand that change, in all ways and all dominions, is both necessary and inevitable. The only reason I have any cause for concern, regardless of the politics involved, is that whatever form our reincarnated standard of good and pure takes, that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater like the woke left did. But again, that's all just my cockamamie opinion, for whatever it's worth. Be sure to leave yours down in the comments. And while you're there, be sure to also leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Share the video with all of your friends, and maybe join up as a member or go check out my books if you're feeling generous. I just released a new one if you're looking for a new fantasy language for your own world or RPG setting. Also, don't forget to come follow me over on my alternate channels and other social media, links for all of which you'll find in the description. And as always, until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay sane, and always remember,
the curse of much knowledge is often indecision. Those who try to hasten the end may delay it. Those who work to delay the end may bring it closer.
may peace be ever upon you.